Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she carried another heavy tray of dishes to table 12. Her feet hurt badly. She had been working for 10 hours straight at Romano's restaurant. This was her second job of the day. Earlier, she had worked at a coffee shop from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Now she would work at Romano's until midnight. Sarah was 24 years old. She had dark brown hair that she always tied back in a neat bun for work. Her eyes were tired but still bright with hope. She wore the black uniform that all waitresses at Romano's had to wear. The restaurant was fancy and expensive. Rich people came here to eat and spend lots of money. 3 months ago, Sarah's life had changed completely. Her parents died in a car accident. It happened on a rainy night when they were driving home from work. Sarah got a phone call from the hospital. She could not believe it was real. Her parents were gone forever. After the funeral, Sarah had to take care of her younger brother, Miguel. He was only 16 years old. He was still in high school and needed someone to look after him. Sarah loved her brother very much. She promised herself that she would take care of him no matter what. The problem was money. Sarah was going to music school. She wanted to become a professional piano player. This had been her dream since she was a little girl. Her parents had worked very hard to pay for her music lessons when she was young. They believed in her dream. They wanted her to have a better life than they had, but music school was very expensive. Sarah owed $30,000 in student loans. She also had to pay rent for the small apartment where she and Miguel lived. She had to buy food and clothes. She had to pay for Miguel's school things. Money was always a problem. That is why Sarah worked 2 jobs every day. She was very tired all the time. She only slept 4 or 5 hours each night. Sometimes she fell asleep in her music classes. Her teachers were worried about her. They told her she needed to rest more, but Sarah could not rest. If she did not work, she and Miguel would have no money. Romano's restaurant was in downtown Chicago. It was a beautiful place with white tablecloths and crystal glasses. The walls were painted gold and had expensive paintings on them. Soft music played from hidden speakers. The food was delicious, but cost a lot of money. In the corner of the main dining room sat a beautiful black piano. It was a Steinway grand piano. Sarah knew it was worth more than $100,000. The piano was shiny and perfect. But nobody ever played it. The manager told all the workers that the piano was just for decoration. Customers were not allowed to touch it. Workers were definitely not allowed to touch it. Every day when Sarah worked, she looked at that piano. She imagined herself sitting at the bench and playing beautiful music. Her fingers would move without her thinking about it. She would pretend to play scales and songs while she carried trays and took orders. The other waitresses thought she was strange. Sarah had been playing piano since she was 6 years old. Her mother cleaned houses for rich families. One family had a piano that nobody used. The mother of that family felt sorry for Sarah's mother. She said Sarah could come and practice on their piano after school. Sarah learned to play by watching videos on the internet and practicing every day. When Sarah was in high school, she got a scholarship to study music. Her parents were so proud. They cried happy tears when she got accepted to the Chicago Music Institute. Sarah was the first person in her family to go to college. At music school, Sarah learned that she was very talented. Her teachers said she had natural ability. They said she could become a professional musician if she worked hard. Sarah practiced for hours every day. She dreamed of playing in concert halls and making beautiful music for thousands of people, but now everything was different. Sarah barely had time to practice anymore. She was too tired from working. Her hands were rough from washing dishes and carrying heavy trays. Sometimes her fingers cramped up when she tried to play. She was forgetting some of the difficult pieces she used to know. Miguel did not understand why Sarah worked so much. He was angry that she was never home. He missed their parents and wanted Sarah to spend time with him. But Sarah had to work. There was no choice. On this Friday night in November, Romano's was very busy. Many rich people came to eat expensive food and drink wine that cost more than Sarah made in a week. Sarah hurried between tables, taking orders and bringing food. Her manager, Mr. Romano, watched everyone carefully. He did not like mistakes. As Sarah walked past the piano for the 100th time that night, she stopped for just a moment. She touched one of the keys very softly. It made a beautiful sound. For just a second, she forgot about everything else. She forgot about her tired feet and her empty bank account. She forgot about her worries and her sadness. She only heard the music. "Sarah," Mr. Romano called sharply. "Get back to work. Do not touch that piano." Sarah jumped and hurried away. Her face turned red with embarrassment. Some customers had seen her touch the piano. She hoped Mr. Romano would not fire her. She needed this job too much. The evening continued. Sarah served food and cleaned tables. She smiled at customers even though she was exhausted. She counted her tips and hoped she would make enough money to pay the electric bill this month. Around 9 o'clock, something unusual happened. A group of well-dressed people came into the restaurant. Mr. Romano became very excited. He straightened his tie and hurried to greet them personally. Sarah could tell these were very important customers. The man leading the group was tall and had gray hair. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in 3 months. His shoes were shiny leather. He had a confident way of walking that showed he was used to people paying attention to him. The other people with him looked important too. They all had expensive clothes and watches. They talked quietly among themselves. Sarah heard one of them mention something about a $500 million deal. These people had more money than Sarah could even imagine. Mr. Romano seated the group at the best table in the restaurant. It was near the window with a view of the city lights. It was also very close to the piano. Sarah's section included that table. She would have to serve these important people. Sarah took a deep breath and walked over to the table. She had to be very careful not to make any mistakes. Rich customers could be very demanding. If she did something wrong, Mr. Romano might fire her. As she approached the table, Sarah noticed something. The man with gray hair kept looking at the piano. His eyes would move from his menu to the piano and back again. Sarah wondered if he wanted someone to play it, but she knew that would never happen. The piano was just for show. Sarah reached the table and prepared to take their orders. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Sarah walked slowly to the important table. Her hands shook a little as she held her notepad and pen. She had served rich customers before, but these people seemed different. They looked like they owned the whole world. "Good evening," Sarah said with her best smile. "Welcome to Romano's. My name is Sarah, and I will be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with some drinks?" The man with gray hair looked up at her. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. "I'll have a glass of your best red wine," he said. His voice was deep and confident. "Something expensive." The other people at the table ordered drinks too. Sarah wrote everything down carefully. She did not want to make any mistakes. As she was writing, she noticed the man with gray hair looking at her hands. "You have interesting hands," he said suddenly. "They look like musicians' hands." Sarah was surprised. Most customers did not talk to waitresses about personal things. "Thank you, sir," she said politely. She did not know what else to say. "Do you play an instrument?" the man asked. Sarah hesitated. She was not supposed to talk about her personal life with customers. But something about this man made her want to answer honestly. "Yes, sir." "I play piano," she said quietly. The man smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that meant he was thinking of something tricky. "Piano, you say? How interesting." Sarah finished taking the drink orders and hurried to the bar. The bartender, Tony, had been working at Romano's for 15 years. He knew everything about the restaurant and all the customers. "Who is that man at table 7? Sarah asked Tony as he made the drinks. Tony looked over at the table. His eyes got wide. "You don't know who that is?" he whispered. "That's Marcus Wellington. He's one of the richest men in America. He owns a big technology company. They say he's worth more than $2 billion. Sarah almost dropped the tray of drinks she was carrying. $2 billion? She could not even imagine that much money. Her student loan of $30,000 seemed huge to her. But to this man, $30,000 was nothing. Be very careful with him, Tony warned. He's famous for being strange. He likes to play tricks on people and make crazy bets. Last month, he paid a homeless man $10,000 to sing opera in the middle of a busy street. Sarah carried the drinks back to the table. Her heart was beating fast. She had never served someone so rich and powerful before. She placed each drink carefully in front of the right person. "Thank you, Sarah," Marcus Wellington said. He had remembered her name. "Tell me, where did you learn to play piano?" Sarah looked around nervously. Mr. Romano was watching from across the room. He did not like it when waitresses spent too much time talking to customers. "I learned when I was young, sir," Sarah said quickly. "My mother worked for a family that had a piano. They let me practice. And do you still play?" Marcus asked. He leaned back in his chair and studied her face. "Yes, sir. I'm studying music at the Chicago Music Institute." Sarah immediately regretted saying this. She did not know why she was telling this stranger about her life. Marcus's eyes lit up with interest. "A music student? How wonderful. And I suppose you look at that beautiful piano over there and wish you could play it." Sarah's face turned red. She had been caught. "I should take your food orders now," she said, trying to change the subject, but Marcus was not ready to let the conversation end. "You didn't answer my question. Do you look at that piano and wish you could play it?" Sarah glanced at the piano, then back at Marcus. Something in his eyes made her tell the truth. "Yes, sir, I do," Marcus laughed loudly. The sound made other customers turn to look at their table. "I knew it. I saw you looking at it when you walked by earlier. Your fingers were moving like you were playing an invisible piano." Sarah felt embarrassed. She had not realized that anyone was watching her. "You know what I think?" Marcus said, his voice getting louder. "I think you're dying to play that piano. I think you dream about it every night." The other people at Marcus's table were listening now. They seemed amused by their friend's behavior. This was clearly the kind of thing he did often. "Sir, I really should take your food orders?" Sarah said again. She was getting worried. Mr. Romano was starting to walk toward their table, but Marcus stood up suddenly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. Other customers turned to stare. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced to the entire restaurant. His voice carried across the room. "I have an announcement to make." The restaurant became quiet. Everyone stopped eating and talking. They all looked at Marcus Wellington. Mr. Romano stopped walking and stood frozen in the middle of the room. "This young lady," Marcus said, pointing at Sarah, "is a piano student. She has been looking at that beautiful piano all evening, wishing she could play it." Sarah wanted to disappear. Her face was burning red. She could feel dozens of eyes staring at her. "So I have a proposition," Marcus continued. "A little wager, if you will." Sarah's heart sank. Tony had warned her about Marcus's crazy bets. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He held it up so everyone could see the screen. "This shows my bank account," he said. "As you can see, I have quite a lot of money." Sarah could see numbers on the screen, but she could not read them from where she stood. But she heard other customers gasp. "Here's my offer," Marcus said, looking directly at Sarah. "If you can sit down at that piano and play something that truly moves me, something that touches my heart, I will pay for your entire music school education. Every penny of it." The restaurant was completely silent. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. Her music school tuition was $30,000. To this man, that was probably like $30 to a normal person. "But," Marcus continued, and his voice became serious, "if you play and fail to impress me, if your music does not move me, then you must quit your job here tonight. You must walk out and never come back." The silence in the restaurant became even deeper. Sarah felt like she could not breathe. This was impossible. It was too risky. "Sir," Mr. Romano finally found his voice, "the piano is not to be played by staff. It's against restaurant policy." Marcus turned to look at Mr. Romano. "I'll pay you $5,000 to break your policy for 10 minutes. Mr. Romano's mouth fell open. $5,000 was more than most people made in 2 months. Marcus looked back at Sarah. So what do you say? Do you have the courage to take my challenge? Sarah's mind was racing. If she won, all her money problems would be solved. She could focus on her studies. She could spend time with Miguel. But if she lost, she would have no job. She and Miguel might lose their apartment. Sarah started to speak, but no words came out. Think about it, Marcus said. $30,000. All your student loans paid off. Your freedom to pursue your dreams without working 2 jobs every day. Sarah looked at the piano. It seemed both beautiful and terrifying. She thought about her parents. They had worked so hard to give her opportunities. They had believed in her music. I need a minute to think, Sarah whispered. Marcus smiled his tricky smile again. Of course, but don't take too long. The evening is getting late, and everyone is waiting to see what you decide. Sarah stood there, surrounded by the stares of 50 strangers, facing the biggest decision of her life. Sarah stood frozen in the middle of the restaurant. Every person in the room was staring at her. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. The choice seemed impossible. Play the piano and risk everything, or walk away and wonder forever what might have been. She thought about Miguel at home, probably doing his homework at their small kitchen table. He needed her to keep working. If she lost this job, how would they pay rent? How would they buy food? But then she thought about her parents. Her mother had cleaned houses for rich families, working on her hands and knees to scrub floors. Her father had worked in a factory, coming home every day with his hands dirty and his back aching. They had done all of this so Sarah could have a better life. They had believed in her music. What would they tell me to do? Sarah thought to herself. Marcus Wellington was watching her with great interest. He seemed to enjoy putting people in difficult situations. The other customers whispered quietly to each other. Some of them looked excited, like they were watching a movie. Others looked sorry for Sarah. Mr. Romano walked over to Sarah. You don't have to do this, he whispered. This man is crazy. Just ignore him and continue working. But Sarah knew she could not ignore this chance. How many people get offered $30,000 for playing piano? This might be the only opportunity she would ever have to change her life. Sarah looked at the piano again. It was so beautiful and perfect. She had dreamed of playing a piano like this since she was a little girl. Most students at her music school would never get to touch such an expensive instrument. I need to call my brother, Sarah said suddenly. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Your brother? If I'm going to risk my job, I need to tell him. He's only 16. If I lose my job, it affects him too. Marcus nodded. Fair enough, but make it quick. Everyone is waiting. Sarah pulled out her old phone and called Miguel. He answered after 3 rings. Sarah, why are you calling? Are you okay? Miguel, I need to tell you something. There's a man here who wants to pay for my music school if I can play piano well enough to impress him. That sounds great. What's the problem? Sarah's voice was shaking. If I don't impress him, I lose my job. We might not be able to pay rent. There was silence on the phone for a moment. Then Miguel spoke, and his voice was strong and sure. Sarah, you are the best piano player I know. You are the best piano player anyone knows. Mom and Dad always said you had a gift. They would want you to try. Tears started to form in Sarah's eyes. But what if I fail? You won't fail, Miguel said. And even if something goes wrong, we'll figure it out together. We always do. Play the piano, Sarah. Show everyone how amazing you are. Sarah wiped her eyes and put her phone away. She looked around the restaurant one more time. Then she looked at Marcus Wellington. I'll do it, she said. The restaurant erupted in whispers and gasps. Marcus clapped his hands together with delight. Excellent, he said. This is going to be very entertaining. Sarah walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt like it took forever. The piano bench was black leather and looked very expensive. Sarah had never sat on anything so fancy. She lifted the lid that covered the piano keys. The keys were perfect white and black, like teeth in a beautiful smile. She touched middle C very gently. The sound was pure and clear, better than any piano she had ever played. What are you going to play? Marcus called out from his table. Sarah had been thinking about this. She knew many difficult pieces that would show off her technical skill. But something told her that Marcus Wellington was not looking for technical perfection. He had said he wanted to be moved, he wanted to feel something. I'm going to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Sarah announced. But I'm going to play it my way. Sarah had learned this piece when she was 16. It was one of the first difficult pieces she had mastered. Her piano teacher had said it was too advanced for her, but Sarah had practiced it for months until she could play it perfectly. Sarah sat down on the bench and adjusted her position. She placed her hands over the keys and took a deep breath. The restaurant was completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen. Sarah began to play. The first notes were soft and gentle, like a whisper. Sarah's fingers moved across the keys with perfect control. The melody was beautiful and sad, like a lullaby that told a story of love and loss. As Sarah played, something magical began to happen. She forgot about the people watching her. She forgot about Marcus Wellington and his challenge. She forgot about her fears and worries. There was only the music. Sarah had played this piece hundreds of times before, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, she was not just playing the notes that Chopin had written. She was telling her own story through the music. When she reached the middle section of the piece, Sarah began to add her own touches. She had learned some jazz techniques from videos on the internet. She wove these new ideas into Chopin's classical melody. The result was something unique and beautiful. The customers in the restaurant were amazed. They had come here to eat expensive food, but now they were hearing music that was better than anything they could buy. Several people had stopped eating completely. They just sat and listened with their mouths open. Sarah's fingers danced across the keys. The music filled every corner of the restaurant. It seemed to wrap around each person like a warm blanket. Some customers had tears in their eyes. Even Marcus Wellington looked surprised. He had expected Sarah to play adequately. He had not expected her to play like a professional. This was not the performance of a struggling music student. This was the performance of someone with real talent. As Sarah continued playing, she began to think about her parents. She remembered sitting at their old upright piano at home, practicing while her mother cooked dinner. She remembered her father listening from his chair and smiling when she played particularly well. The music became more emotional as Sarah thought about these memories. Her playing became more expressive. She was not just moving her fingers anymore. She was putting her whole heart into every note. The restaurant staff had gathered near the kitchen door to listen. Tony, the bartender, had tears running down his cheeks. Even Mr. Romano, who had been angry about breaking the restaurant's rules, was now completely captivated by the music. Sarah approached the ending of the piece. But instead of finishing the way Chopin had written it, she decided to do something special. She began to slow down the tempo and make the melody even more beautiful and personal. The final notes hung in the air like drops of crystal. When Sarah played the very last note, she held it for a long time, letting the sound fade away naturally. Then there was complete silence. Sarah sat at the piano bench, her hands still resting on the keys. She was breathing hard as if she had run a long distance. She had put everything she had into that performance. Slowly, she turned around to face the restaurant. Everyone was staring at her, but their expressions had changed. They were no longer looking at a tired waitress who was taking a crazy risk. They were looking at a real musician who had just shared something beautiful with them. Marcus Wellington was staring at Sarah with an expression she could not read. His mouth was slightly open, as if he was surprised. For the first time since she had met him, he seemed to have nothing to say. The silence stretched on and on. Sarah began to worry. Had she failed? Was Marcus not impressed? Would she have to leave her job and face an uncertain future? Then, from somewhere in the restaurant, one person began to clap. The clapping started slowly with just one person. Then another person joined in, then another. Soon, the entire restaurant was clapping loudly. Some people were standing up from their tables. The sound filled the room like thunder. Sarah sat at the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She had never received applause like this before. In her music classes, people clapped politely when someone finished playing. But this was different. This was real appreciation from people who had been truly moved by her music. Marcus Wellington was still sitting at his table, not clapping. He was staring at Sarah with a strange expression on his face. Sarah could not tell if he was impressed or disappointed. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. The clapping continued for almost a full minute. Finally, it began to quiet down as people returned to their seats. The restaurant became silent again, except for the soft sound of people whispering to each other. Marcus stood up slowly from his table. He walked toward the piano where Sarah was still sitting. Every step he took seemed to echo in the quiet room. Sarah watched him approach, trying to read his face. When Marcus reached the piano, he stopped just a few feet away from Sarah. He looked at her for a long moment without saying anything. Sarah felt like he was looking into her soul. "That was—" Marcus began, then stopped. He seemed to be searching for the right words. "That was extraordinary." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. But she was not sure if this meant she had won the challenge. "You didn't just play the notes on the page," Marcus continued. "You told a story. You made me feel things I haven't felt in years." Marcus turned to address the entire restaurant. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have traveled all over the world. I have heard famous musicians perform in the best concert halls. But I have rarely heard anything as moving as what this young woman just shared with us." The customers murmured their agreement. Several people nodded their heads. Marcus looked back at Sarah. "You have won my challenge." "I will pay for your music school education as promised," Sarah gasped. She could not believe it was real. $30,000. All of her student loans would be paid off. She would be free to focus on her studies without working 2 jobs every day. But before Sarah could respond, Marcus held up his hand. "However," he said, "I want to ask you something first." Sarah's heart sank. There was always a catch with rich people, she thought. "I want to know more about your story," Marcus said. "Why are you working as a waitress when you have this much musical talent?" Sarah hesitated. She did not like talking about her personal problems with strangers. But something about Marcus's expression made her feel like she could trust him. "My parents died 3 months ago in a car accident," Sarah said quietly. "I have to take care of my younger brother. He's only 16 and still in high school." Several people in the restaurant made sympathetic sounds. Sarah saw a woman at a nearby table wipe tears from her eyes. "I work 2 jobs to pay for my music school and to support my brother," Sarah continued. "I work at a coffee shop in the morning and here at night. Sometimes I only sleep 4 hours." Marcus nodded slowly. "And your music? How often do you get to practice?" "Not very often," Sarah admitted. "I'm too tired most of the time. My hands get sore from carrying heavy trays and washing dishes. Sometimes I forget pieces I used to know well." "Yet you just played like a professional musician," Marcus observed. "How is that possible?" Sarah thought about this question. "Music is not something I do," she said finally. "It's something I am. Even when I can't practice, the music is still inside me. When I played tonight, it felt like coming home." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, but this time it was not his tricky smile from before. This was a genuine, warm smile. "That is the most beautiful thing anyone has said to me in a very long time," he said. Marcus walked back to his table and picked up his phone. He tapped on the screen for a few moments, then returned to the piano. "I just transferred $30,000 to a special account," he announced. "Tomorrow you can go to your school's financial office and tell them that your tuition has been paid in full." Sarah could not speak. She felt like she was dreaming. This could not be happening to her, but Marcus was not finished. "I also want to make you another offer," he said. "But this one is not part of our original deal." Sarah waited, not sure what to expect. "I am starting a foundation to help young artists," Marcus explained. We provide scholarships and mentorship to talented people who need support. I would like you to be our first scholarship recipient. But you already paid for my school, Sarah said, confused. The scholarship is different, Marcus said. It includes money for living expenses, so you won't have to work while you study. It also includes private lessons with the best piano teachers in Chicago. And when you graduate, we will help you start your professional career. Sarah felt dizzy. This was too much good news at once. She could not process it all. There is one condition, Marcus added. I'm having a gala next month to launch my foundation. I would like you to perform at the event. There will be many important people there, including music industry professionals. I don't know what to say, Sarah stammered. Say yes, called out Miguel's voice. Sarah turned around, surprised. Miguel was standing at the entrance to the restaurant. He must have taken a bus downtown after their phone call. Miguel, what are you doing here? Miguel walked toward the piano. I had to see this for myself. I heard you're playing from outside on the street. Sarah, that was incredible. Miguel looked at Marcus. Sir, my sister is the most talented person I know. She has been taking care of me since our parents died, working herself to exhaustion. She deserves this opportunity. Marcus smiled at Miguel. You must be very proud of your sister. I am, Miguel said firmly. She's my hero. Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes again. She looked around the restaurant at all the faces, watching her. These strangers had witnessed the most important moment of her life. I accept your offer, Sarah said to Marcus, all of it. The scholarship, the gala performance, everything. The restaurant erupted in applause again. This time, Marcus joined in the clapping. Even Mr. Romano was smiling and clapping, though Sarah suspected he was thinking about the $5,000 Marcus had paid him. As the applause continued, Sarah stood up from the piano bench. She hugged Miguel tightly. Then she looked back at the beautiful piano that had changed her life. Thank you, she whispered to the piano, as if it were a living thing that had helped her. Marcus approached Sarah and Miguel. There is something else you should know, he said. Someone recorded your performance on their phone and posted it online. It already has thousands of views. Sarah looked shocked. Someone recorded it? The whole thing, Marcus said. Your performance and our conversation. People are calling it inspiring. They're sharing it all over social media. Sarah did not know whether to be excited or nervous about this news. She had never wanted to be famous. She just wanted to make music. Don't worry, Marcus said, seeing her expression. This kind of attention will help your career. People will remember your name. When you perform at the gala next month, you will already have an audience. As the evening continued, many customers approached Sarah to congratulate her and tell her how much her music had moved them. Some of them gave her their business cards and asked her to play at their events. Sarah realized that her life had completely changed in the space of 20 minutes. She would never have to worry about money again. She could focus on becoming the best musician she could be. Most importantly, she could take proper care of Miguel and give him the opportunities their parents had wanted him to have, but the most amazing part was not the money or the opportunities. It was the feeling Sarah had experienced while playing the piano. For those few minutes, she had felt completely alive and free. She had remembered why she fell in love with music in the first place. As Sarah and Miguel prepared to leave the restaurant that night, Marcus gave Sarah his business card. Call me tomorrow, he said. We have a lot of details to work out, but tonight, just celebrate. You've earned it. Sarah looked at the business card. It was simple and elegant, with just Marcus's name and phone number, but it represented a completely new future for her and Miguel. Walking out of Romano's restaurant that night, Sarah felt like she was walking into a new life. 6 months had passed since that incredible night at Romano's restaurant. Sarah could hardly believe how much her life had changed. She was sitting in her new apartment, a bright 2-bedroom place near her music school. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, filling the room with warmth. In the corner of the living room sat a beautiful upright piano that Marcus had bought for her. It was not as grand as the Steinway at Romano's, but it was perfect for practicing. Sarah played it every morning before her classes and every evening before bed. Miguel was in his bedroom, doing homework at a real desk instead of the wobbly kitchen table they used to have. He was getting good grades in school and had even joined the drama club. For the first time since their parents died, he seemed truly happy. Sarah's phone rang. She saw Marcus's name on the screen and answered immediately. "Hello, Marcus," she said. She had learned to call him by his first name instead of Sir. "Sarah, how are you feeling about tonight?" Marcus asked. His voice sounded excited. Tonight was Sarah's second major performance since Romano's. She was playing at the Chicago Symphony Hall as part of a young artist showcase. It was a dream come true for any music student. "I'm nervous," Sarah admitted. "But good nervous." "You should be excited, not nervous," Marcus said. "The hall is sold out. People are coming from all over the country to hear you play." This was hard for Sarah to believe. 6 months ago, she was an unknown waitress struggling to pay her bills. Now people bought tickets specifically to hear her music, the video of her performance at Romano's had indeed gone viral, just as Marcus had predicted. It had been viewed over 5 million times. People loved the story of the waitress who dared to play piano for a billionaire. They loved seeing someone's dreams come true, but Sarah had learned that viral fame was complicated. Some people genuinely appreciated her music. Others were just curious about the piano girl they had heard about online. Sarah had to prove over and over that she was a serious musician, not just an internet sensation. The gala performance at Marcus's foundation launch had been Sarah's first big test. She had been terrified that night, performing for 300 wealthy and influential people. But once she sat down at the piano, her nerves disappeared. The music took over just like it always did. That performance had led to more opportunities. Music teachers wanted to work with her. Concert halls invited her to perform. Record companies expressed interest in signing her. "Are you still planning to play the Chopin piece tonight?" Marcus asked. "Yes, but I'm also playing something new," Sarah said. "I wrote it myself." It's called The Night Everything Changed. Sarah had discovered that she had a talent for composing music as well as performing it. Her original pieces told stories about her life, her struggles, and her hopes. Audiences connected with these personal compositions even more than with classical pieces. "I can't wait to hear it," Marcus said. "I'll be in the front row, of course." Marcus had become more than just Sarah's benefactor. He had become a true friend and mentor. He attended all of her performances and gave her advice about her career. He had also helped Miguel apply to good colleges and had promised to pay for his education too after hanging up with Marcus. Sarah went to her piano to practice one more time. As she played through her new composition, she thought about how much had changed. At the Chicago Music Institute, Sarah was now one of the top students. She no longer fell asleep in class or struggled to keep up with assignments. With the scholarship money, she could focus entirely on her studies. Her professors said she was progressing faster than any student they had ever taught. Sarah had also been able to help other struggling students. She tutored classmates who were working jobs to pay for school. She shared practice rooms with students who could not afford their own instruments. She remembered what it felt like to be exhausted and worried about money. Miguel knocked on Sarah's bedroom door. "It's time to get ready," he said. "The car will be here in an hour." Marcus had arranged for a professional car service to take Sarah to her performances. This still felt strange to her, but she was learning to accept help gracefully. Sarah put on the beautiful black dress that Marcus's foundation had bought for her performances. It was simple but elegant, and it made her feel confident and professional. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the person she saw. 6 months ago, she had been tired and stressed all the time. Her face had been pale from lack of sleep, and her hands had been rough from restaurant work. Now she looked healthy and happy. Her eyes sparkled with excitement instead of exhaustion. The car ride to Symphony Hall gave Sarah time to think. She thought about her parents and how proud they would be. They had always believed in her music, even when times were difficult. Sarah felt their presence with her whenever she performed. She also thought about all the people who had supported her journey. Marcus, of course, but also Tony the bartender who had cried during her first performance, Mr. Romano, who now advertised that the famous piano girl used to work at his restaurant. Her music teachers, who had never given up on her even when she was struggling when the car arrived at Symphony Hall. Sarah was amazed to see a long line of people waiting to get in. Some of them recognized her as she walked toward the stage entrance and called out encouragement. "Good luck, Sarah. We love you. Play beautifully tonight." Backstage, Sarah went through her usual pre-performance routine. She warmed up her fingers with scales and arpeggios. She reviewed the music in her mind, visualizing each piece from beginning to end. She took deep breaths and reminded herself that she belonged on this stage. 20 minutes before showtime, Marcus appeared backstage. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Ready," Sarah said, and she meant it. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said. His expression was serious but happy. "There are 3 record company executives in the audience tonight. They want to offer you recording contracts." Sarah's eyes widened. A recording contract had been her ultimate dream since she was a little girl. "Which companies?" she asked. "All the major ones," Marcus replied. "They've been watching your career since the Romano's video. Tonight's performance will help you decide which offer to accept." Sarah felt a flutter of nerves, but also excitement. Everything was happening so fast. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "The Chicago Symphony Orchestra has invited you to perform as their featured soloist next season. You would be the youngest soloist in their history." This news was almost too much to process. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra was world famous. Playing with them would establish Sarah as a serious professional musician. "Marcus, I don't know how." "To thank you for everything you've done," Sarah said. Marcus smiled. "You don't need to thank me. You earned all of this with your talent and hard work. I just gave you an opportunity." The stage manager appeared. "Sarah, it's time." Sarah walked toward the stage, her heart pounding with anticipation rather than fear. As she stepped into the bright lights, she saw the packed auditorium. Nearly 2,000 people had come to hear her play. Sarah sat down at the concert grand piano. It was even more beautiful than the one at Romano's. She adjusted the bench and placed her hands over the keys. The audience became completely quiet. Sarah looked out at the sea of faces and spotted Marcus in the front row. He gave her an encouraging nod. Sarah began to play Chopin's Nocturne in a flat major, the same piece she had played that life-changing night at Romano's. But tonight she played it with even more depth and emotion. She had lived more, learned more, and grown as both a person and a musician. When she finished the Chopin piece, the audience applauded enthusiastically. But Sarah knew the real test would be her original composition. "The next piece is something I wrote myself," Sarah announced into the microphone. "It's called The Night Everything Changed, and it tells the story of how one moment of courage can transform your entire life." Sarah began to play her own music. The melody was beautiful and hopeful, but it also contained echoes of sadness and struggle. It told the story of losing her parents, working multiple jobs, and feeling like her dreams were impossible. Then the music changed, becoming brighter and more triumphant. This part of the piece represented the night at Romano's and all the wonderful things that had followed. As Sarah played, she noticed that many people in the audience were crying. Her music was touching their hearts, just as it had that first night at the restaurant. When Sarah played the final notes of her composition, the silence lasted for several seconds. Then the entire auditorium exploded in applause. People stood up from their seats, clapping and cheering. The ovation lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Sarah stood up from the piano bench and took a bow. She looked out at the audience and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. All of these people had come to hear her music. They had been moved by her story and her songs. Later that evening, after meeting with the record company executives and accepting congratulations from dozens of well-wishers, Sarah and Miguel went home to their apartment. "I'm proud of you," Miguel said as they sat together on their couch. "I'm proud of us," Sarah replied. We made it through the hard times together. Sarah looked at her piano in the corner of the room. Tomorrow, she would practice for her next performance. She would continue working on new compositions and preparing for her recording contract.